disruptions, he is optimistic that financing the budget is possible. But as KTN's Noah Kipkemboi reports, balancing the interests will be a daunting task for the Cabinet Secretary, and the reality that this year's budget will be funded by you, the Mwananchi, through payment of taxes. Take a look.
Order number 7.
If Kenyans thought that the debt situation will slow down, then they're in for a rude shock. Well, in the 2021-2022 national budget, standing at 3.6 trillion shillings, will be no mean feat to finance, especially amidst a pandemic. But just how will Yatani finance this budget?
Revenue underperformance and elevated expenditure associated with the adverse impact of COVID-19 pandemic. The shortfalls in revenues reflect weaker business environment and the impact of containment measures adopted in March 2020 following the outbreak of the pandemic. The government then responded to the pandemic by, among others, implementing tax relief measures in April 2020. These measures resulted in reduced collection of revenues, adversely impacting the implementation of the budget.
Well, a total of 1.56 trillion shillings will be raised through loans to meet the budget deficit. This will mean Kenya will be borrowing heavily in the new financial year to meet its budget. Revenue performance dipped with the economy growing by only 0.6%. Treasury projects 2.1 trillion shillings in total revenue, including appropriations in aid and grants, with ordinary revenue in the budget projected at 1.78 trillion shillings.
The medium-term budget is designed to support economic recovery and reduce fiscal deficit. The policy aims to mobilize revenues through the ongoing reforms in tax policy and administration. On the expenditure side,
the fiscal deficit will be financed by borrowing heavily from the domestic market, a move that has long been in competition with credit injection to local businesses.
The medium-term budget is designed to support economic recovery and reduce fiscal deficit. The policy aims to mobilize revenues through the ongoing reforms in tax policy and administration. On the expenditure side,
the total allocation to the county governments for the fiscal year 2021-2022 is 409.9 billion shillings, but to reduce over-dependency on equitable share, Treasury rolled out the national policy to support enhancement of county governments' on-source revenue.
2020 for consideration. It is my hope that this bill will get necessary priority and approval. Further, Mr. Speaker, the government, through a multi-agency task force, has reviewed existing revenue management systems with a view to deploying one integrated county revenue management system for use by all the 47 county governments. The task force has completed its work and made appropriate recommendations for consideration by the two levels of government.
Heavy debt is, however, placing a strain on the government's resources, with Kenya's overall debt redemption and interest payments for the next financial year standing at 1.1 trillion shillings, representing 88% of the 1.3 trillion shillings consolidated fund services. With CS Ukur Yatani intimating to Parliament that he will be seeking to raise the debt ceiling, this will certainly see Kenyans shoulder the burden of funding the largest budget in the country's financial history. Noah Kipkemboi, KTN News.
And after Noah has set the pace for us with that riveting coverage, we still want to continue the discussions right here. Being a Friday, we normally have our Friday Biz Chat weekly, where we analyze the top stories that made the headlines in the world of business across the week. And we are joined by our resident panelists, that is Mr. Ken Gishinga. Ken Gishinga will be joining us from our City Center studio. Ken, good to have you as always.
Thank you very much, Branchi.
And of course, Mr. Ohoro Ndoho is also joining us virtually on by way of Zoom. Mr. Ohoro, good to have you. And finally, in studio, we'll be having Liz Nkuku. She is a certified financial analyst and is the founder of Liz Consulting. We're going to be having this conversation with all of them. Good to have you once again. Let's start with you, Mr. Ohoro. What stood out for you in the 3.6 trillion shilling budget?
Well, what always sticks out for me is the fact that we are going to borrow basically to pay payroll, because pretty much all our revenue will go to paying back debt. But again, I think it's always a picture story around expenditure exceeding our income. And around that question, I don't think we've really come up with a solution. Clearly, as a bigger economy, we need to spend more. But the only other thing that stands out for me is that every year we talk about fiscal consolidation. And the only place that can actually make a difference is in payroll. And that is not a conversation, I think, that will happen this time. The third thing, of course, is the signaling to increase the debt ceiling. That's going to be an interesting one. That's going to be a very difficult conversation because you're already at 9 trillion. I expect we'll go to about 12 trillion, but I don't see a way back from that sort of debt going forward.
Let's now talk to Liz. Liz, there are pundits who argue that some sectors have been underfunded, and especially given the conditions we are living in right now, where health is such a key aspect, even in business survival and post-COVID economic recovery. People are saying that health has been underfunded, while other not so priority sectors have been given a huge, chunk of the budget. What do you say about this, and what perhaps would you have switched differently in the allocations?
I think, thank you so much. If you think about the point at which the budget is being prepared, there are quite a couple of issues that it's a significant balance that the minister had to do, the CS had to do, because we know that the revenue collections are going to be an uphill task. But at the same time, you need to make sure that all the sectors are well funded. So the key thing is, how do you make sure that you are stimulating the economy in the sectors that you have to focus on? Yes, health is a significant pillar, but one of the key things that is going to propel us going forward, it is largely the ones that are largely going to affect the economy. So things like the manufacturing sector that is meant to help grow the economy. So when I think about it, yes, the health sector might not have gotten the very best, but I think it's not been fully, it could have done better with that. But in my view, I think sectors that really affect someone immediately to improve the employment rate, that is what I think should have even gotten much, much more.
Great. So let me talk to Ken on this, because we have deficits to finance in the budget. Ken, our borrowing headroom is too thin currently, and of course, there's that talk of increasing the debt ceiling from 9 trillion to 12 trillion Kenya shillings. Do we have any other alternative ways of financing the debt, financing the budget, I beg your pardon, without necessarily going for debt? Because right now there are few options for us to borrow concessionally. The only remaining options are commercial loans, which are very expensive and come with other, quite daunting conditionalities. So what other options do we have as a nation to finance this budget?
Well, many thanks, Brian George. Before I answer your question, first I wish to correct you. The actual budget number is 3.03 trillion, and that number is what is actually in the actual budget statement that was read yesterday. In fact, we have been spending quite a bit of time because the 3.66 trillion is what has been used prior, even in the prior estimates, and that's what analysts are using. But if you read the actual document, it's 3.03. So we do hope Treasury can at least come out today to try and clarify, because that's not an insignificant difference. You're talking of about 600 billion shillings difference between the two numbers. But that said, to your question, I listened to the discussions yesterday, and indeed the issue of debt came up. And I've always said when it comes to debt, there are two strategies you need to employ. You have to look at obviously the easy one, which is managing wastage, reducing corruption, and a lot of commentary has been around there, how to really reduce wastage. But I think we need to look about the revenue side. I've not had enough conversation about changing our tax policy, looking at our taxes. And there are two types of taxes. You have productive tax and you have consumption tax. Most of the tax measures Kenyans are complaining about is consumption tax. This is your VAT, particularly on things like bread, on motorcycles. So I think the big shift has to be, we need a new tax policy, but we need to move more towards taxing production and less of consumption, because taxing consumption disproportionately hurts people at the bottom of the pyramid, and it creates a big distortion in the market. So I think for me that is the huge opportunity in terms of research that needs to be developed for us to be able to raise more revenue.
And even as we talk about all these priorities in this year's budget was on the Big Four agenda, do we stand a chance to achieve what we set out to achieve? Because this is a penultimate budget for the president, really. If you think about it, his time is ticking, and of course he may not have as much time. So do you think he's going to hack it?
I mean, there will be some challenges, and I think there are a couple of challenges when it comes to the Big Four. Number one, what I've always said is, if you look at affordable housing, you look at food security, which is agriculture, and if you look at healthcare, those are devolved functions. So those are actually functions that need to be done at the county level, not at the national level. So from the very beginning, you have that structural problem of who needs to do this, because it's a presidential ambition, but these are devolved functions. So it's the governors actually who need to be running with these. But that said, we saw some allocations, about 60B to food security, manufacturing getting the same. But I think until we disentangle these functions of who does what, I think it will continuously delay the proper implementation of it.
Come back to studio to Liz on the process of budget making. We saw it earlier on during in the dispensation of the Constitution that was, between the time that James Gishuru was the founding the Minister for Finance during the time of independence in 1963 until Ambassador Robinson Njeru Githai was the last Minister for Finance at the time when we were still using the last Constitution. We saw that the budget making process was solely a reserve of the National Treasury. Now, during this Constitution, we are now seeing that the budget-making process is a multifaceted and a multi-agency, affair where Parliament, the Auditor General is involved, of course, because of the, devolved units of government. But members of the public who are equally a stakeholder in the budget-making process felt that they were not fully involved in, the budget-making process. Perhaps would you talk to us about that, Liz, and how can government enhance, the budget-making process to be more people-centered? Because people felt that there are a lot of misplaced priorities than what the real Mwananchi wants.
I think what we are currently facing is the challenges of democracy, because as a country, we have really devolved over time. And one of the key things is that in a pure democracy, it's not easy for you to carry everyone along. And when you're thinking about a capitalist economy whereby when you think about the number of people who are contributing to the maybe to the tax bracket, they are not as many. So from a capitalistic perspective, yes, it's good to hear everybody out, but the question is, someone has to make decisions. So yes, it's good to maybe say that this would have been done this way, this would have been done differently. But the truth of the matter is, the government is walking a tightrope. So as we speak today, yes, the budget is about 3 trillion. We have a lot of debt to pay. And given that is the situation, and you don't want to increase those debts, those debt levels. So if, for example, we went ahead and reallocated more to some of the other sectors, what then that would have meant is that we need more revenue, which we cannot be able to raise. So the alternative would have been maybe for us to go again and borrow more. So it's a delicate balance. Yes, it's good to listen to people, but I think someone has to make the call, and I think that then ends up at the Treasury in terms of balancing.
Amazing. Mr. Ohoro, the government is investing almost a quarter of its budget on infrastructural development. Pundits have argued that, of course, the same issue about misplaced priorities. So are we looking at an opportunity cost whereby government is investing in the future and not on now on the issues that are pressing now? And what would be your recommendation? All right, we seem to be having a technical issue right there with Ohoro. We're going to try and get back to him. I think we could perhaps take a few more stories and at the time when we're going to... All right. So my director tells me we're still continuing with the with the conversation. I think I want to set that question to Liz too. The government is investing a quarter of its budget, on infrastructural development, and a lot of people, a lot of pundits, experts are saying that no, we cannot have a budget that is invested so much on the future other than addressing the issues that are, weighty at hand. Would you talk to us about that?
Okay. So I will look at the budget just like any household. So if you think about you're the head of the household, one of the things that you need to do is balance today and tomorrow. So there is consumption today where you want to go on holiday versus maybe you wanting to take your kids to a better school. So what the government is doing, they have to balance the two. They have to make sure that there is food on the table, but at the same time, they want to make sure that there is a better tomorrow. So you cannot completely reduce or cut down the development expenditure, because if you did, then 3-4 years down the line, we shall actually come back and say, I wish you did this road, I wish you did this sewerage. So the Big Four agenda has to at least continue even if it's in a very small way. So we have to continue investing in infrastructure for the better of tomorrow, because that forms the basis of growth into the future. So in my own view, I think, yeah, there's been a decline in development expenditure over time, but maybe the thing is we shall reap the fruits of this much, much later. So you cannot completely look down and say that we shall not invest in infrastructure.
All right. We want to now go industry specific and engage an expert on matters of external affairs and policy at the African Wildlife Foundation. His name is Mr. Fred, and I want to talk to him about the allocations that were made for tourism and environmental, conservation here in the country. Mr. Fred, good to have you in studio. Could you talk to us about what stood out for you in that allocation for, tourism and also conservation?
Thank you very much, Brian. What stood out for me was actually the allocation to conservation as a whole, specifically tourism and the environmental sector, vis-a-vis the other sectors. So I'll give you an example. The defense sector had an allocation of about 294 billion into defense, whereas the tourism sector had a paltry 9.6 billion. And you would think that coming from the COVID crisis, our biggest defense really is to strengthen our economic growth opportunities through tourism, which is one of the most important sectors for multiplying jobs and creating opportunities. So having a greater focus on tourism, we think would have been really important. The other key sector is also conservation. And here specifically, I need to commend the government for increasing its allocation to KWS. Really powerful commitment there. However, we also see that the decrease in allocation to tourism by almost 26% normally will impact communities that live around national parks. And remember, KWS is protecting national reserves. However, communities outside national parks are critical to the conservation of nature. Actually, in Kenya, 65% of our biodiversity and wildlife is outside national parks. So there needs to be a greater investment in tourism and other alternative livelihoods means in those communities, because that is going to help elevate the economy.
Let me just pick it up from where you stopped. You seem to be having a bit of disquiet on the budgetary allocation for conservation and tourism. There was the proposal by the Minister for Tourism here in Kenya, Najib Balala, to have, the national parks, partly privately run and conservation services privately run. What do you say about that? Do you think that would also bridge the much needed, the gap between, other NGOs and government and also private sector in, making conservation work in this country?
So as AWF, we respect the role of government and the directives from government, and the minister's word is really important. Mm-hmm. However, every country has different types of ways in protecting its natural resources. And like I said earlier, 65% of Kenya's natural resources sits outside national parks. So let's talk about where the resource is. And if the resource is outside the national parks, then we need to empower communities to take care of those resources through conservancies, through activities that really help restore nature and regenerate the degraded lands. So that's where I think we should put our efforts. Private sector engagement, it's important, and we should encourage that as much as possible. But communities need to be at the center of conservation, and I think that should be the focus.
Great. We have seen our tourism largely dependent on wildlife, but let's face it, one, there is the issue of reduced discretionary and disposable income in people's pockets. So they are not able to invest, or rather they are not able to, go for trips and make holidays and all that. Perhaps as a stakeholder in tourism, are there any other non-conventional methods of travel that perhaps people can take up on just to sustain this industry that has been so much hit by the COVID-19 pandemic? Because data shows that around the industry in the last 1 year has lost about 100 billion shillings. So are there non-conventional ways of people taking on tourism without necessarily risking their lives?
I think the tourism sector has been like you said, the hardest hit. And at AWF, we have consistently pointed out that tourism needs to sit at the center of the way we try to revive our economies going forward. Okay, we're having a crisis today, but that crisis will come and go. That said, we think at AWF that the focus should be on those industries that are suffering at the moment. Our lodges, our community enterprises that are currently down, we need to keep our focus on them and keep investing in them. We also need to find a way that we start looking at ways in which we are not entirely dependent on the tourism income to essentially